The village of Manda, with its ancient traditions rooted as deeply as the gnarled baobab trees, stirred in anticipation. Dust swirled in the midday sun, catching in the throats of villagers gathered around the sacred fire. The seer, an elderly woman draped in worn animal skins, raised her hand, commanding silence. Her milky eyes, seemingly blind to the present, sought visions from the beyond. A heavy tension hung in the air. The villagers watched, breathless, as the seer began to speak. "The father of Zara's child," she intoned, her voice raspy yet resolute, "will become the next chief of Manda. He will usher in an era of prosperity, but only if the true father is known." But before we dive deeper into this tale, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Make sure to turn on notifications so you won't miss the next exciting chapter. Whispers spread like wildfire. The villagers exchanged glances, their minds racing with speculation. Zara stood in the crowd, her chin lifted, eyes unwavering. Known for her beauty and intelligence, she had defied tradition by choosing to remain unmarried. Yet now, with her son Kofi, she was at the center of a prophecy that threatened to upend the very fabric of the village's customs. The council elders conferred quietly, and soon the decision was announced. A challenge would be set. All the men who claimed to be the father of Kofi would be tasked to retrieve a sacred gemstone from the cliffs of Mount Ukuta. Only the true father would succeed, guided by the spirits themselves. Zara's lips tightened into a thin line. She had sensed something amiss from the moment the prophecy was spoken. But she remained silent, her thoughts concealed behind her calm exterior. For now, she would wait and see how the events unfolded. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the village as preparations for the challenge began. The men lined up, each one filled with a mix of determination and fear. Among them stood Malik, a man of humble birth but known for his cunning mind and persuasive tongue. Beside him was Amari, a quiet hunter who had long admired Zara from afar but kept his thoughts to himself. The village buzzed with excitement. Children darted between the huts, and the elders took their places on woven mats, murmuring among themselves about who might emerge victorious. The task was simple, yet treacherous. Climb the sacred Mount Ukuta, brave its steep slopes, and retrieve a gemstone that rested in a hidden cave known only to the spirits. Malik, with his confident swagger, addressed the crowd. "I will return with the gemstone," he proclaimed, his voice cutting through the murmurs. "The spirits have already shown me the path." Zara watched him carefully, her eyes narrowing. She had never trusted Malik's smooth words or his too-easy smile. Amari, on the other hand, stood quietly, his eyes focused on the mountain. He said nothing, but Zara sensed a strength in his silence. As the signal was given, the men set off toward Mount Ukuta. Malik led the way, his steps purposeful, while others followed, some hesitant, others boldly. Amari lagged behind, taking measured steps, watching his footing. The journey was grueling. The mountain's paths were narrow and treacherous, the air thin and cold. Malik moved swiftly, his eyes darting, searching for any sign of the sacred cave. Behind him, the men struggled, slipping on loose rocks, grasping at roots for support. But Amari, moving with the patience of a hunter, took his time, feeling the mountain beneath him, sensing its rhythms. As the hours passed, Malik reached the cave first. Inside, he found the gemstone, a gleaming blue stone that seemed to pulse with a light of its own. Triumphant, he snatched it up and turned back toward the village. When he returned, the villagers cheered. The prophecy seemed to have been fulfilled. Malik stood tall, the gemstone held aloft, a victorious grin on his face. But as Zara looked at him, something in her heart whispered that the truth was still hidden, buried beneath layers of deceit. She glanced toward the path, where Amari was still making his way down the mountain, his steps deliberate and steady. And she knew, with a certainty that burned like fire, that this was only the beginning. The night air was thick with tension as the village celebrated Malik's return. The elders gathered around the sacred fire, nodding approvingly, while the villagers praised the spirits for guiding Malik to the gemstone. But Zara remained on the outskirts, her eyes drifting toward the path from Mount Ukuta, where Amari was still making his descent. Hours passed and the revelry continued, but Zara did not move from her spot. Her heart raced with conflicting emotions. Malik's triumph seemed almost too convenient, too neatly aligned with the seer's prophecy. As doubts brewed within her, a figure finally emerged from the darkness. Amari, covered in dust and exhaustion but moving with quiet determination. The villagers grew silent, watching as Amari approached. He carried no gemstone, only the weariness of the climb etched into his features. Yet, there was a calmness in his demeanor, a sense of purpose that contrasted sharply with Malik's earlier bravado. "I did not find the stone," Amari admitted, his voice steady, "but I have felt the mountain's truth. It is not the gemstone that reveals a man's worth, but his intent and spirit." The elders frowned, murmuring among themselves, and Malik scoffed loudly, stepping forward to confront Amari. "So you failed," he sneered, holding up the gemstone. "The spirits have spoken through this. I am the true father of Kofi, destined to lead this village." Zara's gaze sharpened. Something in Malik's confidence felt forced, like a poorly rehearsed performance. She scanned the faces of the elders, catching the quick glance exchanged between Malik and the seer. A realization gripped her heart. This was more than a test of strength or endurance. It was a game, and Malik was playing to win. Determined to find answers, Zara moved swiftly through the crowd, slipping into the shadows. She knew the time had come to uncover the secrets that lay beneath the surface. That night, Zara waited in silence outside the seer's hut. The moon hung low, casting pale beams through the canopy of trees. She heard the soft rustle of feet on the dirt path and held her breath. Malik's voice broke the stillness, low and urgent. "You promised me," he whispered harshly. "The prophecy, the gemstone, everything was meant to go according to plan." The seer's voice, older and cracked, replied, "I kept my part, Malik. But you must ensure that Zara does not interfere further. She is unpredictable." Zara felt a cold wave of anger and realization. The prophecy had been manipulated. Malik and the seer had conspired to bend fate to their will. Her suspicions were confirmed, but she knew that mere accusations would not be enough. The village needed proof, something undeniable that would reveal the truth to everyone. She needed to act quickly. There was only one who might know a way to expose this deception. The hermit who lived deep within the forest, shunned by the village for his strange ways but rumored to possess knowledge beyond the understanding of common folk. Without hesitation, Zara left the village under the cover of darkness, her feet moving swiftly toward the thick woods. The path was narrow and overgrown, the branches clawing at her skin as if trying to hold her back. But she pressed on, driven by a fierce determination. Hours later, she reached a small clearing. A flicker of firelight glowed faintly in the distance, and Zara approached cautiously. The hermit, an old man with eyes like embers and skin weathered by time, sat by a crackling fire, waiting as if he had anticipated her arrival. "I need your help," Zara began, her voice steady but urgent. "I need a way to reveal the true father of my child, to expose the lies that have been woven around this village." The hermit studied her silently for a moment, then nodded. "There is a ritual," he replied slowly. "A ritual that calls upon the spirits to reveal the hidden truths. But it is not without risks. You must be certain, Zara, for once it begins, there is no turning back." Zara met his gaze without hesitation. "I am certain," she affirmed. "I will do whatever it takes to bring justice and truth to my son and my people." The hermit nodded again and began to instruct her in the ways of the ritual, describing the steps with a calm intensity. As Zara listened, the weight of her decision settled over her. She knew this path would not be easy, but it was the only way to uncover the truth and challenge the forces that sought to bind her village to a false destiny. With dawn approaching, Zara turned back toward Manda, her heart set on the ritual that would change everything. She knew she had only one chance, and she intended to take it. Zara returned to the village with the first light of dawn, her mind racing with the hermit's instructions. The ritual he had taught her was unlike anything she had ever known. It required courage, faith, and a willingness to confront the unknown. As she walked past the sleepy huts and empty paths, she could feel the weight of what was to come pressing upon her shoulders. The festival day had arrived, and the villagers were preparing for the celebrations. Brightly colored fabrics adorned the square, and the scent of roasting meat filled the air. Drums echoed in the background, their deep rhythms vibrating through the earth. Yet beneath the festivities, a quiet tension simmered. The prophecy, the challenge, the whispers of conspiracy, all of it had created an undercurrent of uncertainty that the villagers could not shake off. Zara moved purposefully through the crowd, her eyes scanning for Amari. She found him near the edge of the square, helping a group of elders prepare a ceremonial fire. As she approached, he turned to face her, his expression a mix of concern and curiosity. "Zara," he greeted, his voice low. "What have you learned?" She took a deep breath, glancing around to ensure no one else could hear. "There is a ritual," she whispered, "one that can reveal the truth about Kofi's father. But it must be done tonight, under the full moon, in front of the entire village." Amari's brows furrowed. "Are you certain it will work? The villagers are already divided. This could cause even more unrest." Zara nodded firmly. "It is the only way," she replied. "Malik and the seer have deceived us all. This ritual will expose their lies. We must act now while the spirits are willing to speak." Amari hesitated for a moment, then placed a hand on her shoulder. "I trust you, Zara," he said quietly, "and I will stand by you, no matter what happens." With renewed determination, Zara moved to the center of the square, where the villagers had gathered for the evening's ceremonies. She raised her voice, commanding attention. "People of Manda," she began, "tonight we will call upon the spirits for guidance. There has been deception among us, and we must seek the truth." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Malik, standing at the edge of the gathering, stiffened, his eyes narrowing. The seer shifted uneasily beside him, sensing the change in the air. Zara continued, "I will perform a ritual, taught to me by one who understands the spirit's ways. This ritual will reveal the true father of my child and the next rightful leader of our village." The villagers exchanged anxious glances. Some whispered words of support, while others voiced skepticism. But Zara's voice held them, a calm certainty that cut through their doubts. As the moon rose high above, Zara began the ritual. She stood before the sacred fire, her hands raised to the sky, chanting the words the hermit had taught her. The air grew heavy with expectation, the flames flickering as if they too waited for the truth to be revealed. The night was silent except for Zara's voice, which carried over the crowd, rising and falling with the rhythm of her incantation. The villagers watched with bated breath, their eyes fixed on the sacred fire. Malik shifted uncomfortably, while the seer's face darkened with concern. As Zara's chant reached its crescendo, she threw a handful of sacred herbs into the flames. The fire blazed brightly, sending sparks into the night sky. Then, a hush fell over the square as Zara turned to face Malik, the gemstone still clutched in his hand. "Malik," she called out, her voice steady, "step forward and present the stone to the fire." Malik hesitated, but the eyes of the villagers were upon him. With a forced smile, he stepped forward, holding the gemstone above the flames. For a moment, nothing happened, and then, nothing continued to happen. The stone remained dull and lifeless, its surface reflecting only the firelight. A murmur spread through the crowd, a wave of confusion and disbelief. Malik's face flushed with anger, and he turned to the seer, who stared at the stone with wide, disbelieving eyes. Zara's heart pounded, but she maintained her composure. "And now," she continued, turning to Amari, "it is your turn. Present your hands to the fire." Amari stepped forward, his face calm, his steps sure. He knelt by the fire, extending his hands toward the flames. For a moment, nothing seemed to change. Then, the river, the sacred river that flowed near the village, began to glow with a soft, golden light. The water shimmered, reflecting the light of the full moon, and the crowd gasped. "The river speaks!" an elder cried out, falling to his knees. "The spirits have chosen." Zara's voice rang out, cutting through the rising voices of the crowd. "Amari is the true father of my child, Kofi. The spirits have revealed the truth and the deception is undone." The villagers erupted in a mix of shock, relief, and confusion. Some began to cheer, while others looked to Malik and the seer, who stood frozen, their faces pale with the realization that their scheme had been exposed. Zara stepped forward, her voice strong and unwavering. "Malik, you have deceived this village. And you," she said, turning to the seer, "have betrayed the trust of the spirits you claim to serve." Malik tried to speak, but his words faltered. The seer, seeing the tide turn against her, stepped back, her mouth opening and closing in stunned silence. The truth had been revealed, and now, Zara knew, the village of Manda would have to choose its new path. The air seemed to crackle with tension as Zara's words hung over the gathered villagers. The murmur of voices grew louder, blending into a cacophony of shock, anger, and confusion. Some stared at Malik with scorn, while others turned toward the seer with betrayed looks, their faith in her wisdom shattered by the revelation. An elder, a man with a voice as deep as the forest, stepped forward. "Malik," he called out, "you have brought shame upon us all. The spirits do not lie. What have you to say for yourself? Malik's face was ashen, his eyes darting around, seeking a way out. He stammered, It was not my doing alone. The seer, she... But his words were drowned out by the discontent growing around him. Villagers shouted accusations, and some even stepped back as if afraid to be near him. The seer, realizing the tide had turned fully against her, raised her hands, her voice trembling. I acted in the interests of the village, she protested. I saw a future where Malik's strength would bring prosperity. I was only following what I believed was the will of the spirits. Zara stepped forward, her eyes flashing with righteous anger. You twisted the spirits' words for your gain, she accused. You let ambition blind you to the truth, and now the spirits themselves have spoken against you. The Council of Elders nodded solemnly. The head elder, an ancient woman with eyes sharp as a hawk's, raised her staff. Malik and the seer have broken the sacred trust of our people, she declared. For their deceit, Malik shall be stripped of his honor, and the seer shall be removed from her position. They will no longer hold power or sway in Manda. A collective sigh of relief swept through the crowd, followed by murmurs of agreement. Malik slumped to his knees, defeated, while the seer's face twisted with a mix of fury and despair. Zara felt a wave of satisfaction, knowing justice had been served, but she also felt the weight of the village's future resting on her shoulders. Amari stepped beside her, his presence a comforting strength. You did what was right, Zara, he whispered. Now the village needs your guidance more than ever. Zara nodded. She knew that the path ahead would not be easy, but with the truth finally in the open, she felt a new sense of hope blossom within her. The days following the revelation were filled with a flurry of activity. The village elders met frequently to discuss the next steps, while the villagers, still buzzing with the shock of what had occurred, began to adjust to the new reality. With Malik discredited and the seer's influence diminished, there was a palpable sense of change in the air. Zara, now standing alongside Amari as a leader of sorts, worked tirelessly to restore trust and unity within the village. She spoke openly to the people, assuring them that the spirits had guided them back to the true path, and promising a future built on honesty and fairness. Amari, once a quiet and reserved figure, now found his voice. He spoke with calm authority, encouraging the villagers to look forward and embrace the new opportunities that lay ahead. Together, he and Zara began to forge a vision for Manda that respected the traditions of the past, but was open to change and growth. One evening, as the sun dipped low and the village gathered by the river, Zara addressed the people once more. We have faced deceit and uncertainty, she said, her voice carrying across the water. But we have emerged stronger, with our spirits unbroken. This is the beginning of a new chapter for Manda, one where we walk with honesty, guided by the true will of the spirits. The villagers cheered, their faces filled with hope. They began to see that the old ways, though revered, did not have to bind them to a future of blind obedience. Under Zara and Amari's guidance, they could adapt and thrive. As the crowd dispersed, Amari took Zara's hand. We've done well, he murmured. But there will be challenges ahead. Others may not accept these changes so easily. Zara nodded, a small smile playing on her lips. I know, she replied. But we've already proven that we can face whatever comes our way. Together, we'll continue to guide Manda toward a brighter future. In the distance, the river still glowed with a faint golden light, a quiet reminder of the truth that had set them free. The village, once bound by secrets and deceit, now stood ready to forge its own destiny, guided by new principles and a renewed sense of purpose. And while the days ahead held uncertainties, there was no doubt that a new spirit had taken root in Manda, one that promised hope, growth, and a future shaped by those courageous enough to seek the truth. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Make sure to turn on notifications so you won't miss the next exciting chapter.